Who do you trust? In these dark times, we need to keep our circle tight. We have to look around and be very critical, very analytical. We can't let our emotions get in the way of our understanding of the information. Information holds one very simple truth. It's right in your face and you can't deny it unless you bury your head in the sand. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to look not at the many faces of David Quintieri, we're going to see something that gave me an idea. This chart here, it is out of Statista, the institutions Americans trust most and least. Of course, this is just a sample, and they did not ask every American, I assure you, but it just made me think. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to rant on. So I'm looking at this chart. Number one, right at the bottom of the list, you can see Congress. Congress at 11%. 11%. And I've heard numbers, anywhere from 9%, 10%, 11% over the years. Generally, people do not trust Congress. And I would say there's something that we need to think about. Perhaps I will begin by suggesting to everybody my own beliefs, and you tell me where you sit. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust any institution, corporation, anybody, top or bottom. I don't trust them. That's how I live my life. So understand that I have a bias. And I want to be honest about that. If you tell me something is good, I'll keep it in the back of my mind. I'm not going to be like some people. They're completely cynical. They don't believe anything. And they have their own they just go based on, this silly notion of, whatever their belief system is, programmed from childhood. They don't realize that, okay? I like to take the information, collect it, keep it in the back of my mind, and maybe look it up later, maybe ask other people, start to form a belief system based on many factors instead of just wherever people are getting their information from. And so I want to look at this a little deeper. The media. So if you look on here, newspapers as an example, 23%, that's a low number as far as I'm concerned. People don't really believe the newspapers. I think if you gave a more specific newspaper, perhaps like if you said, do you trust the New York Times? I think that more people would probably say yes. I think that number is low. But people read it regardless. And then they form a belief based on that. We have to understand that there are corporations out there, there are sectors out there that spend billions of dollars per year to make sure that the public keeps them in a good image. So just for example, the dairy industry. This is one example, comes off the top of my head. The dairy industry pays off. In Canada, we have the Canada's Food Guide, okay? And that's basically your recommended daily intake, the foods that you should be eating. They show you the 4 food groups. And within that, you can see you need to eat some dairy. Now, with that dairy, I found it interesting because you look at it and it's actually a large consumption there if you were to eat based on their standards. I looked into it deeper, and I may have done a video about this, but regardless, I found the information, and you actually can look this up yourself. The dairy industry donates to Canada's Food Guide every year. And they're public about that. It's not a secret. They donate to the Food Guide every single year. The industry is subsidized, okay? You have their connections in with people in government as well. Whether it's, the equivalent of the Department of Agriculture in the States, you'll see that all around. These big industries, they lobby the government, or in fact, they are alumni in one way back or forth, the revolving door. And then we see information that's being provided to us. Here, drink your dairy, it's good for you. But you also just paid off that company to tell me that. So should I trust you? The same with Big Pharma. Exactly, we found that GlaxoSmithKline had 50,000 healthcare practitioners or people in the medical industry. I'm not sure the terminology was exactly because it wasn't just doctors, but they had 50,000 people on their payroll that were promoting their products. 50,000. Outside of their own salesmen, they had people in the industry there getting paid by them. So how do I trust that? And it goes all the way through this. I think one thing that was good here is that Americans, and I think this goes for a lot of places, they trust small businesses. If you walk into a place, let's just say a hardware store, and it's one of these places around the corner, which are becoming fewer and far between, but you go in there and you ask, "Hello, sir, how are you? I need this particular, this particular thing for my house." They would tell you, "Look, this is what I did. This is what my customers had going on. I've been selling a lot of this. I haven't been selling this model. You should get this." You can trust that individual. Yes, they have to worry about their bottom line, but at the same time, you can understand where this person's coming from. You can level with them. You wouldn't do that with some sort of big entity out there as much. If a person's working at the McDonald's, let's say, do you necessarily trust that person working behind the counter? Probably just enough to make your sandwich, but not necessarily, on a more grand scale. But the propaganda exists everywhere. Banks, public schools, these are institutions that are spending billions of dollars to make sure they clean up their act constantly. And we know what's happening with the public schools, how they have been an instrument of these mega corporations or major corporations to make sure that they have a mindless workforce. And that has worked very well since the beginning of all of this, going back to Carnegie's, if you read the Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, if you want to see that book, go to the link in the description under my favorite books, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And it just breaks it down so well. It's all a bunch of documents, chronologically sorted, and you can read exactly what the public school system is all about. It focuses mostly on the US, but it is a global book in a way. And I thought it was amazing because it shows you how much effort is put in to ensure these systems stay intact. And so, when you believe something, understand where you got that from. Is that formulated over years and years of experience working in that particular field, or maybe doing that particular action, or going in that area, physically, a personal location that you visited on a frequent basis, so you would have knowledge about that? Or is it something you heard? Is it something you were told? If you're going based on somebody else's word, on some other book that you read, other individuals, TV, media, a so-called figurehead of some organization or institution, what's in it for them? And that goes for the media, who has advertisers ensuring that they are doing the right thing and saying the right thing. Is it going to be your schools, which make sure that you follow orders? Don't get too creative now. Don't draw outside the lines. Is it the medical system, which is legally only allowed to do one certain type of practice? and badmouth all of the other practices, which many people do see results for certain issues. And then you could look at me. What is my bias? What am I here to do? And I would say, don't trust a single word that I say. Ever. Take the information, take the sources of the information, which I always try to mention, but of course all of my sources are in the description of the videos. I've told you about the books I've read. I got links in the description so you could see them for yourself, where I'm picking up some of this information. You look at it for yourself. You decide for yourself. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody else. You have to dig in deep. And that means getting it from all sources. People you know, physically going to the locations, every way. All right? So that's it. It's a rant, but it's something that I really wanted to share with you, that I wanted to know where you stand on this. I'd like to know your thoughts. Please, of course, post them in the comments section here. This video is something different than I normally do, but it has me thinking, because it's so important to understand where people's heads are at, not just from the individuals watching the video or the individuals who will comment, but I want to know what's going on inside of other people's minds. I'm always trying to ask people valid questions about everything. The way that I converse with people is definitely a lot different than others. First of all, I'm generally lighthearted with people, and I would just ask a question to pull information. I'm always looking to pull information from people. If that person tells me they work in the financial industry, I got questions for them. If they're working in health, by the way, I've asked many people, whether it's doctors, whether it is anyway down the line, I'm always asking questions, trying to find out details to then be able to strengthen the beliefs that I have. If you found the video informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you give me a thumbs up, it helps to support the channel. So I do appreciate that very much. And if you want the financial education that was not taught to you in schools, these 2 books have it all. You can check them out in the description of this video. Take care.